Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. It's Thursday, August 27th, 2026, episode 583. And I'm just going to talk about the first day back teaching college. So because of the early academic year craziness, because I'm also teaching ESL somewhere else, and just learning the ropes. And I've never taught ESL before, but just trying to learn the ropes, also learn the system of the school. That takes a bit, all that orientation, onboarding kind of stuff. And so it makes it hard for me to listen to the podcasts of other people just to get the news, to hear what's going on, and then have reactions to them. So anyway, uh, but I thought I would make an episode anyway to give you an update as to what's going on and to apologize for not having an episode every day during the school year. But that's kind of usual for this channel. Once the school year starts, it gets a little bit touch and go in terms of when I can do episodes. But I thought I would just talk about my first day back. It's kind of exciting, nervous, whatever, because I'm a lot older now and the students are a lot younger now, so my ability to connect with them probably is decreasing as time goes on. Um, the school where I'm teaching now is not as racially diverse, and I think it's because it's a Catholic school. And so, I mean, because you kind of come knowing that it's Catholic. So it's not just Catholic in name only, but it's there. I mean, not just in the iconography, the statues and the crucifixes and all this other kind of stuff, but a lot of the faculty and student um, events are very, very much religiously focused, which I thought was kind of surprising. So it's not just in name only, but they actually try to have that atmosphere on campus. And for me as a Protestant, it's really interesting. But I'm sure that not all of the students are Catholic, but I think a majority of them are. But nevertheless, they're still people who grew up in America, which means they're socialized into the technology and also the mentality. And so the first day, I always try to make a case uh, to them that they should stay in the class. And the reason is because they're narrow-minded, they're closed-minded, they're in a box with a limited awareness. And I try to use that argument to hook them to stay in the class, but also to pay attention, right? So it's not just the fact that it's supposed to be a boring class to fulfill their graduation requirements, but I'm fighting against AI. I'm fighting against the internet. I don't prohibit the use of electronic devices in class, but at the same time, I then have to compete with it. I am not naive, so I know that they're probably chatting with their friends on social media, shopping, and all this other kind of stuff. And so I have to be more interesting than whatever it is that they're doing online. So anyway, if I can get their attention, then they would have heard that they're not actually being educated, but they're rather being socialized. And I try to make the case by showing them how they just simply jump to conclusions. So they're taught to see certain situations in a certain way, then jump to a conclusion. It's like sight reading. Like when you learn how to read English, for example, here in the United States, they tell you to sight read, that as soon as you see a word, you know how it's pronounced, you know how to say it, and so you can sort of sight read. Um, but it's like sight reading situations. Like, oh, I recognize this situation, I know what's going on, and so they jump to a conclusion. And in many cases, a lot of people are even taught what you're supposed to do in that situation, what the answer is, what the proper behavior is, what you're supposed to feel, and then how you're supposed to resolve it. And I make the case by giving them a simple math problem, 1 plus 1. And most people will say 2, which is, I mean, it's correct. However, the expression as you write it, I write it 1, 0, right? So 1 plus 1 equals 1, 0. And it looks like a 10, but it's 1, 0. But I don't say it. I just say, this is the correct answer. Why, how is this a correct answer? And no one knows. Every once in a while, I would get a student that would say, oh, yeah, that's binary. But these days, since it's not on a test, you're not really challenged to remember it. People just discard it. I remember learning it in fifth grade, and I thought it was so interesting that I remembered it. But I use it as an example, and people then get the idea. Oh, I recognize the problem, and then I jump to the answer. I don't consider other possibilities, which is normal, perfectly normal. But imagine you're in a situation where you jump to the conclusion, but the conclusion is wrong, but you don't know how to come up with a different answer. I also try to demonstrate to them that their knowledge is limited as well. And so I play the capitals game. I say a country and they're supposed to give me the capital. And I don't know. I used to, so the first country is the United States. And uh, there were people who were unsure that the capital of the United States is Washington, D.C., or maybe they thought it was too stupid of a question. Nevertheless, the confidence factor was very, very low. The second country I asked them about is Mexico. And in the one class, one person said Mexico City, which I thought was a little bit shocking because usually I lose everyone. I get silence when we get to Canada. And, I had maybe one student who, in 60, who knew that the capital of Canada was Ottawa. And the explanation I provided to them, like, why don't you know these things? Because these are the two neighboring countries. It's not like I picked an obscure country in Africa or Asia. This is the two countries that border the United States, and most of them have no clue, have no idea what the capital is. And the reason is because they don't care. Uh, but everyone, and I make the case, is because the United States has been bombing any country that it wants. It can do anything that it wants. It has a history of doing this, a recent history. And so you don't need to know about other people. You just bomb them. However, everyone else in the world knows what the capital of the United States is because they're the ones getting bombed. And you want to know about the people who are bombing you. And so you have this kind of arrangement. And so it brings a little bit of a seriousness to the situation. But then it also sets up something that I'm going to say a little bit later in terms of the reserve currency, the dollar as the reserve currency of the world, that their luxury and privilege of not needing to care about others is coming to an end. Right. And so a lot of these guys are freshmen. They're like 17, 18 years old, mostly 18 years old, and they probably never been challenged in this way to show just how little they know. And hopefully it sends the right effect that, oh, I should probably pay attention, I should probably learn, maybe I'll learn something in this class, in this boring class that I don't expect to do anything, maybe attend once in a while, right? Then I show them the power of subjectivity. And I have this and I talked about this in like the first or second episode of this channel, but I even turned on my camera for that little bit. What I would show a piece of paper that had red on one side or blue, depending on which paper I had. So it was blue, and I would say, "This is a picture of Donald Trump." And so people are expecting to see a picture of Donald Trump, but it's just a blue piece of paper. And I uh, basically say, well, you've lived your whole life thinking that Donald Trump is red. And everyone around you says, yeah, Donald Trump is red. And then one day you meet someone who says, no, Donald Trump is white. And you're just confused. You're like, why would you say that? These days, people are taught that if someone disagrees with them, then it must be a racist thing. And so it degenerates. So conversation devolves into this name calling, angry, don't listen to each other fight. And all of them know this. They've seen this. Uh, that there's no discussion. There's just, oh, you disagree with me, so you're a racist. I mean, they recognize the situation. And then I asked them why they got it wrong. And they're confused because they clearly see that the paper is red. But if I'm the one that's saying, no, no, the paper is white, then why are they wrong? Why am I wrong? And it takes a while, but usually most people have uh, no alternate solution. They just can't process this situation. And it's very simple that the other side of the paper is a different color. And so, depending on where you are looking at a certain object, looking at the same object, you will see different things. Now, I say this to talk about perspective, but it also sets up the situation where if you try to convince someone that there is a different way of looking at it, how difficult it is to persuade them that there are different perspectives. And I even asked them after I reveal that there's a different color on another side. I say, well, imagine this is anything that you passionately believe in. How easy would it have been to convince another person or to convince you that you're wrong? And they all realize, or at least whoever was listening, that, oh, I see what's going on here. I'm having all of these strong opinions. I even get angry at other people, but what am I missing? And so I'm trying to set up this situation where maybe they should probably learn a little bit. And then I go on to say that most of scholarship today is about teaching the correct perspective and remain in that perspective, right? In other words, each department in the university is teaching students how to look at things the right way. That's all scholarship is. That's all the university does. Teach people how to, quote unquote, look at things in the correct way. So they're normalizing a certain specific subjectivity. Um, and it explains why they're surprised that certain events which have been simmering and growing over a period of time shocks them, right? Where did this come from? How did this happen? How did I miss it? I also say that a lot of scholarship today normalizes or, excuse me, hides hypocrisy, right? It hides it rather than trying to educate people to think and try to understand things on a deeper level. All they're doing with all of their technical jargon, with all their big 25-cent words, is attempting to hide their own hypocrisy. And I make a big deal that hypocrisy is injustice. And so if you're being a hypocrite, and everyone keys in on that word, right? Everyone knows it's bad, especially to be called a hypocrite, especially at a Catholic school where they're vaguely familiar with Jesus and how he condemned hypocrisy. Well, then I'm not a hypocrite, but oh, yeah, you are. Because that's what we do. We try to justify our own hypocrisy because we know why we had to do something. Well, if that's what we're doing is hiding our own hypocrisy, then our search for justice, uh, shouldn't take that long. You should be able to find it everywhere. So I'm making this point to them that, oh, maybe you should probably take a look at yourself. Maybe you yourself are engaging in hypocrisy. So how did that even happen? And I closed the class by the first day by showing them a shadow sculpture, which I also talked about on this channel early on. But JV Muntean, Muntean, he was a former, I believe, chemistry professor who then started sculpting. And what he realized is that if you carve something just in a certain way, you can create something that casts three different shadows depending on the direction that the light is shining on it. But I just show them the sculpture without any explanation, and I say, well, look, if you go let's just say we're studying this object in the religion department. What are the kind of questions that we ask? We ask, what does it mean? What does it symbolize? How did people, regard it? When did it become sort of in the forefront of their mind? Like, did they celebrate it? Did they worship it? Did they offer sacrifices to it? These are the kind of questions you're going to ask in a religion department. And then if we were in a physics department class, what are the kind of questions that we would ask about this object? Well, you would say, how big is it? What's it made of? Length, width, depth. What's the density? This kind of question. And I said, well, look, you take the results, the reports of that object from the two different perspectives, would you get any closer to understanding what it really is? Now, the university will tell you that, yes, from their department's perspective, they are really getting to the heart of the matter. They really understand whatever it is that they're studying more. But if we were to combine all of the different departments and their perspectives on that object, would they come any closer to understanding what it really is? The fact that it's a shadow sculpture. Would they somehow know by their method of studying and analysis that they would come to the conclusion, oh, it's a shadow sculpture? Maybe in the art department, maybe in the music department, but very few other people, especially scholars in other departments, would manage to figure it out if unless they do so accidentally, but not by their line of questioning, not by their line of reasoning. I mean, look at sociology. What would sociology do? Sociology would just stare at the sculpture all day long, waiting for people to interact with it. So they're not going to get anywhere with that sculpture, right? And so the idea is that, you know, maybe we have to ask different questions. Maybe we have to come up with new approaches to be able to understand what it is that we're seeing. So I'm trying to set up curiosity, the desire to pay attention, right? It's my way of fighting against AI. So to get their attention away from their screens, to listen what's going on in the class, to try to engage in the discussion, to make actual living in the world, interacting with other people and with other countries, to make it interesting again, right? So make learning great again, kind of thing. But also to get them out of their box. And that's something that I'm going to be talking with them next week. I'm going to introduce what the box looks like and tell them, most people who talk about the box, they just are still in the box. It's all a exercise in pretend. Now, the only downside that I've experienced over the last 20 years teaching this way in the other institute, my previous institution, is all of the trouble they cause for other professors, right? So the things that they learn in my class, they take with them to other classes and they start asking those questions. Like, really? What do you mean by that? Are there other ways of looking at this? And it makes it really difficult for other professors. I know because other people would tell me that. And so it's a lot of fun. I get at least a lot of people who normally, I think, check out of class to sort of, sit up and say, whoa, that's something different. And today I'm going to be teaching them or talking about how they choose their truth, right? So to introduce the idea that truth, so-called, is subjective. And we'll see how that goes. But I'll spare you the details. I just wanted to let you know that this is how my first day went, and not knowing how the reaction will be because it's a totally different school, different circumstance, different context. What would the reactions be? And then what would the fallout be as, other people start hearing how I'm teaching this class? But anyway, that's it. And I hope to talk to you guys soon again. Until that next time, peace.